had my own experience of having implants and then getting sick from them. So I knew there was something wrong, that instinct, that gut, that knowing my body.
So we're not talking about judgment toward any individuals. We are talking about education.
Every single time the doctor would come in and say, Marci, you're fine. Everything looks great. I wanted to punch him in the throat because I felt like I was dying.
With this new product, I honestly haven't lost a lot of pounds, but I've lost 5.5 inches and I feel so much better. It's not about the weight.
I think that women in general, we've been conditioned to find our faults. If there is a disconnect between your gut, which is your second brain, and your actual brain, then you're going to be getting all kinds of mixed messages. And those mixed messages do not do you any favors.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
I'm Seth, and this is The Forever Young Show. The most powerful force in this world is a woman who knows who she is, why she is here, and what she wants to accomplish.
And that's where self-care comes in. As a woman, it is my opportunity and my responsibility to take care of me.
Self-care for your mind.
Self-care for your body.
Self-care for your money.
Our mission is to serve women as they fulfill their irreplaceable roles in families, society, business, the fabric of humanity.
So let's get this show on the road.
Marci Nettles is a former law enforcement officer, the creator and host of the Your Blank, What Now podcast, author, and with her husband, Dondee, leader of a 7-figure international wellness business.
Marci believes in the power of the human body and that stories save lives by bringing awareness and community to those who may be stuck and don't know what to do next. She has recently published her first book, The Toxic Truth, which is a compilation of women's stories who vulnerably share their experience with breast implant illness and associated cancers.
Marci is a wife, mother, grandmother, a workplace apostle, and a chaplain. She is also an entrepreneur working with individuals to increase longevity and build bigger dreams. So Marci, tell us about your book, The Toxic Truth.
I would love to. Thank you. Do you care if I show it? Because
show it.
Have you seen it? Have you seen it? Okay, just making sure because it is a little bit like wicked, I guess, is from what I'm hearing. I don't know. But it's all about breast implant illness. And so, I mentioned that I had my own experience of having implants and then getting sick from them. I actually blamed how I was feeling on many different things in my life. First, I blamed it on becoming a police officer shortly after I got my implants and working graveyard. So of course I was tired all of the time. I had to wear this heavy vest, my bulletproof vest, and this gear around my waist that was like 20 pounds. And it was not good for my back. It wasn't. So of course I had back pain. Of course I had brain fog. Of course I had all these things. I blamed it on my circumstances, right? And then in 2009, I was in a car accident on duty that ended up with 3 spine surgeries, and I had a brain injury. And then at that point, I started blaming everything that I was dealing with and how I was feeling because I had had surgery, because I had been put out 5 times in 3 months, because I was on so many prescription medication. So of course, I'm going to have these difficulties. Shortly after that accident is when I learned about activation, and I started on the right path with helping my body have what it needs, reducing damage inside my cells, reducing inflammation, all of the important things, we were doing, and we were doing detox things. We were doing infrared saunas, detox smoothies. As Seth alluded, my husband is a healthcare provider. He's a chiropractor. And so I was getting regular adjustments and care there as well. But we were doing all the right things as well as utilizing the activation products that we have. And yet in 2018, 2019, I just finally got tired of blaming how I was feeling on my accident that had happened 9 years prior. And so I was with Dondee, and we started going to doctors, and we started doing all the tests. We were checking for cancer because, that hereditary, that genetic, that thing that my mother had died from was all of a sudden a concern for me because I didn't know what was going on because I felt like I was dying. We had all the blood work done. We were checking my hormones, and every single time the doctor would come in and say, Marci, you're fine. Everything looks great. I wanted to punch him in the throat because I felt like I was dying. So I knew there was something wrong. You know, that instinct, that gut, that knowing my body, there was something wrong. I just didn't know what it was. And so in 2021, you guys know the Clubhouse app. I know that you've been on there before, and we were on there a lot back in 2021. And early 2021, we had only been on the app for probably 3 months or so prior to February of that year. And you know how they give the notifications that would drop down every time a new person was going live in Clubhouse. And I was swiping it up to get out of it one night. And this was after Dondee and I had gotten to our wits' end. And we were like, God, we need you to show us what's going on here, because we have no idea. We've done everything that we could to figure out what's wrong with Marci. Why is she feeling this way? And we finally stopped relying on our own understanding and turned it over to God, which, gee, one novel idea, right?
That's called fast forward sometimes.
Oh, geez, right?
But then other times he slows it down. Just so you know, like warning, like he knows what's bad. Like it's going to be a good end, but sometimes that choose your own adventure with him, it can change your timing.
Yeah, very much so. And so when we finally asked him to show us, it was just shortly after that I found myself into this Clubhouse room after I had tried to swipe out. It took me in there, and I was started to listen to these women that were sharing stories. And I heard this woman talking about her implants and how she had felt like she was dying, and she found out that the implants were toxic and that they were making her sick, and that when she had them removed, she started feeling better. And then another woman shared her story, and doctors would share their experience with their patients that had gone through this and how they had seen them before, and then they saw them after, and how their symptoms had all seemed to kind of start going away. And I was like, God, is this it? Mm-hmm. And I totally was like, holy crap. And so I started looking into all the stuff they suggested. And then I brought Dondee in. I'm like, hey, babe, what do you know about breast implant illness? And being the medical doctor or the chiropractor, he's like, I don't know anything about it. And I'm like, well, do you think it could be why I'm feeling the way I am? He's like, no. It's like, let's just keep doing more of what we're doing. I'm like, we've been doing this for a long time. I'm tired of it. What if it's because the toxic factory that we've been trying to detox the symptoms of is sewn up inside my body, and so we can't get rid of it no matter what we do? And so I continue to look into it, educate myself, being my own advocate, because most doctors, if you ask them about it, they don't know anything about it either, right? You get the same response as what Dondee gave me. It's like, never heard of it, so it must not be a thing, right? Yeah. But that's not the truth. And so when I learned and then decided, I ended up having my implants removed. And some of the things that had been plaguing me for, well over a decade, I woke up after surgery and they were basically gone. Wow. So if a woman that is listening right now is wondering why they're feeling a certain way, they haven't been able to get answers or solutions, they're getting medication for an autoimmune disorder here or there or whatever it is, and you have implants, I would highly suggest you just at least look into it. And my book's a great way to do that, because as part of my podcast that I had, I interviewed 10 other women that went through the process of explanting their implants after they became sick as well. Some of these women got implants, same reason I did, vanity, right? My identity was not in the right place. But then others actually had breast cancer, and they are automatically rolled into reconstruction with breast implants. And they aren't told that it can also make them sick. They ended up getting sick, and a couple of them actually ended up with additional cancers that are breast implant associated cancers. So think about that, going through breast cancer, having your breast removed, double mastectomies, and then being rolled into reconstruction, which this is serious surgeries every single time, to get sick and get cancer again from the implants they put in you. So this book, The Toxic Truth, is really the stories of 11 women that have been through it, who share their stories very vulnerably, because I am a firm believer that stories save lives when they're shared in a vulnerable way. And each one of these stories are shared very vulnerably with you. And on top of it, I have a couple doctors that wrote intros for the book, as well as having all of the resources in the back from the Global Patient Advocacy Coalition. It's called GPAC. and it's gpacunited.org is where the resources are there. But all of it is right here in this book, and it can be found on Amazon. But it's really a resource for awareness for women that don't know what's going on with them. If they have implants, or maybe they're looking into getting implants and they really want to know what the full cost could be to getting them, it's a great resource for that. And it's also a direct community, because each one of these women have opened up their inbox, their email, to anybody that has questions, or the resources that are in the book is just abundant as well. So it's great. I think it's awesome.
I love it. I love it. So many, like we've talked about, so many women turn to that for their identity. And so if they can know before, then you can help prevent so many women to have to go through what you did.
Yeah. Or at least they can go into it with eyes wide open.
It's true.
Because, there is no shame. There is no judgment. We want women to know that if you have implants and you're doing great, we are so glad that you are. We just want you to be aware that if something happens, because our bodies are really smart, they may put up with synthetic things in them for a while. I mean, like the shots that some people are going to right now for weight loss, right? Yeah. It's like they may do great with it for a few months, but then their body recognizes that that's a synthetic of something that it already makes on its own. It's going to shut down. It's not going to work. There's going to be side effects as objections from our bodies. And so no judgment whatsoever, really just bringing awareness, bringing the opportunity to have resources and a community. And then for women that are considering them, just having a full picture of what the possibility is. There is a black box warning that's supposed to go with every set of implants to the woman that receives those implants. But unfortunately, that warning gets separated generally at the surgeon's office before those implants are put into the patient, and women don't know what the possibilities are. And this is a warning from the FDA. This is not just an approved medical device. These are devices that are going into your body that can cause harm, and they have caused harm.
Well, I think there's a growing, I've noticed, there's a growing movement for explants, right? Women concerned about their health, similar reports to what you've shared, Marci. And there's also, this is really interesting, there is a growing body of research and concern with plastics, with microplastics, with silicone, with micro pieces of silicone, and that we're cooking with, or that we're bottling our water, or that we're throwing in the dishwasher. Okay, folks, we're talking about, it's a little more involved. When we're talking about a breast implant and augmentation, that is something you pretty much travel with 24/7, right? So just, I think intuitively to me, and again, I love the way you put it, Marci, because this is exactly how I feel. There is no judgment here. And I'm not going to say but. So we're not talking about judgment toward any individuals. We are talking about education. Yes. We are talking about awareness. We are talking about, for me, just kind of intuitively thinking, now, wait a second. Now, what am I putting in my body, right? Yeah. And not only just some random place in the body. We're talking about organs,
your vital organs.
We're talking about, vital organ space. We're talking about combination with adipose tissue, right? And we know the connections between when adipose tissue, fat tissues, retain toxins or are introduced to toxins, right? Or essentially can harbor toxins, right? And we're just to me, all of that leaves major question marks about the long-term health, of an individual who has had, breast implants, right? Just concern, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when we talk about the implants, so in the beginning, back in the 50s, it was all silicone, right? Inside and the outside is all silicone. And then it came out that silicone was so toxic and it was so damaging, carcinogenic, and just so many different things inside of the human body. And so they changed it to saline, right? But guess what, people? What do you think that saline is encapsulated with? What do you think the capsule is? It's not saline.
Yep.
It's silicone. Right? And so silicone actually is made up of a minimum of 37 toxic chemicals. And those chemicals are leaching out into your body the whole time that they're inside of you. And just like what you're talking about with the fat cells, fat gathers up toxins and holds on to it, right? That's why when you start a weight loss journey or a weight management journey that includes losing weight, when you're breaking down that fat and you're not drinking enough water, you are going to have detox symptoms because you are going to have all these toxins that are going to be released. I like to use the example of a suitcase. I mean, think about you're stuffing all your stuff into this suitcase and you're running down the airport, to get to your gate, and it comes open and all this stuff falls out. You're in a mess, aren't you? And so you have to sit there and you're putting it back in. But with this, when you start breaking down the fat and those toxins start breaking loose, if you're not drinking enough water, those toxins are going to go find other places to settle in and to hold up. And so when it comes to implant removal, you first of all have to make sure that you have it done the right way. This needs to be a total capsulectomy. It means that it needs to go on block is what they call it, ENBLOC, meaning that it's got to be that capsule that is created around the implant, because a scar tissue capsule is developed around the implant to protect you. Because the body can't get it out, it starts creating a protective barrier. And in between that barrier and the implant, there gets all kinds of the toxic waste. And so if you don't take it all out in one piece, you're going to break it open and it's going to spill out into the rest of the body, right? Mm-hmm. And then that creates additional toxicity issues. Well, because it goes and it hides in our fat, it hides in our glands, it hides in different places that can be really damaging to us. They actually say that once you do have your implants removed, it can take 1 to 2 months for every year that you had your implants, after you get them taken out properly, to fully detox. And so like I had them for 21 years.
Oh, wow.
Right? But I know in my knower that the reason why I was as highly functioning, because I have people that are like, Marci, we never knew that you even felt that way. Well, first of all, we decide how we're going to feel and how we're going to show up, right? And second of all, I had already been activated and been giving my body the best chance it could possibly have with our activators for, it had been 10 years when I had my implants removed. I had already been activated, right? And so I know that that's why I had like an upper hand, where other women, it's taken a lot longer, it's been a lot harder, and they've been a lot more sick than I was. So I'm forever grateful that I was introduced to taking ownership of my wellness and doing everything I can, even though I was still having to face and pay the piper for the choices I had made, right? Because we all do. Yeah. I mean, whatever choice you make, you have to pay the piper.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you talk about hidden costs, right? Or later costs. What did you say, Marci? I'm trying to remember. What did you say? There are always
beyond the cost of getting the implant. There's the whole total picture of costs, right?
Correct.
I mean, so I had 21 years of not feeling well, not being able to have the energy that I wanted, not being able to live the thriving life entirely that I wanted, which meant that my kids missed out on a mom that had the energy and was focused and really able to be there for them, on top of, my work schedule and all that kind of stuff. I was done when I got home. But then on top of that, I mean, not only the damage that it did to my bodies. I mean, you should see this. No, you shouldn't see the scars. The scars it's a very invasive and difficult surgery. Right? I mean, I have scars from side to side, up through the center, lollipop scars. I have scars galore. That's just part of the price. But then to actually have the explant surgery, it was triple the price of the implant.
Oh my goodness.
So, I mean, that's what I'm talking about when you're looking at the bird's eye view and getting a total picture. And that's what I hope that this book gives women the opportunity to see, is what the total picture can look like if they choose to get implants, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's never just what we're faced with in the beginning. It's everything between here at the beginning and when there's a possible exit, and then beyond. because when I look in the mirror, it's like now I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful for a body that heals so well. And I do not miss the extra pounds on my shoulder. I do not the extra stress on my back, which, by the way, guys, that's another benefit to this journey that we're all on together right now. I mean, you mentioned Dr. Casey Means. We were listening to her in an interview she was doing, and when she said that every extra pound that we have on our bodies is fat, when we're overweight, that's an extra 4 pounds of stress and pressure that we're putting on our knees and on our lower extremities and our hips, our back, all that kind of stuff. Gosh, there's so many important reasons for us to take ownership of our wellness and to make decisions to make 2025 completely different than what we've had up until now. But again, 95 to 97% of it is in your hands and your choice and your development of your wellness. It's yours.
I can't help but think that looming cost of explant surgery being three times what the implant surgery was has to be a deterring factor to many women who are considering, reversing, right, what they initially put in. Mm-hmm. But like, if that's where we are, that's where we are. It reminds me of this saying, which is, you can pay now or you can pay later. Mm-hmm. But either way, you're going to have to pay. Yeah. And that's not a scare tactic. It's just an immutable law, right? Mm-hmm. You can plant the seeds now and do all the work to reap the harvest of nourishment, or you can play now and then have to pay 10 times the amount for somebody else to feed you, right?
Mm-hmm. Or change your diapers.
Or change your diapers. So you just have to be willing to pay. You're going to have to pay. So do you want to pay in increments now, for the most part, like what you pay to take care of your body now today, right? Maybe you're on, maybe I know it was a shift for me decades ago to say, okay, now I'm going to spend $50 on a product to invest in my health, maybe a supplement back in the day. And today we spend, I should say, we
invest.
Yes. We take a much bigger part of our budget for our health, right? And to, percentage wise, right? And I think that's the message. Well, one of the messages we want to communicate is, listen, you have to expand the percentage that you're willing to spend on your long-term health. We have to play the long game, right? You have to invest now, because if you invest now, the rewards, right, as the investment grows, can far outweigh maybe that what we perceive as pain of investing now. But if we don't invest now, then we're probably going to have a far greater payment or pain when the piper needs to be paid, when we have to have critical care, when we have to have long-term interventive care, when we have to, as I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but the average 60 or 70-year-old, the average number of prescription medications that they essentially are required to be on in order to survive, right?
Yeah, investing in your wellness now is a small sacrifice compared to the cost of your illness in the future, because illness is much more expensive, especially, I'm praying that things are going to be getting better. And I'm praying that more people are going to be looking at their health in a different way, that our food is going to be cleaned up, our water is going to be cleaned up. And I'm praying that someone else is going to be doing those things. But guess what? You can't bank on that. Mm-hmm. What you can bank on is what you choose to do, right? Where you choose to place priority and what you choose to do for your wellness and for your family's wellness. You can't rely on someone else to do it for you. I pray, I'm just crossing my fingers here, but I pray, which has nothing to do with crossing your fingers, that health is going to become a priority in this country instead of illness, right?
Yes.
Because if so, we will be able to change the problem that has become one of the biggest problems in this country, and that's obesity. That is people being overweight. That is blood sugar problems, addictive issues. I mean, food addiction is a real thing, and it has to do with those toxic chemicals that they're putting into your food that are designed to get you addicted to it. And so making the choices to read labels, if you can't read the word, don't eat it because it's toxic, and take ownership. Decide to take ownership today on your own wellness, and you will be able to thank yourself in the future. Not to mention, your kids will thank you for the habits that you'll be teaching them. You'll be able to make this such a much easier journey for them in the future than if you just let it continue the way that it's going, because childhood obesity, diabetes, cancer, all of those things that never existed when we were young are here because of the food that we're feeding them and the environment that they're in.
Yeah. With this new product of losing, like, I honestly haven't lost a lot of pounds, but I've lost 5.5 inches and I feel so much better. And so I'm like, that's like, it's not about the weight. It's about how
we have
I
to
feel.
change our mindset. We have to change our minds around the whole weight journey. I mean, because we have been so programmed to think that that number on the scale is the tell all, where it lies to us constantly, especially on journeys like this, because I'm sure that you've exchanged, fat for muscle.
Yes, I have.
Right. And so even though 5 pounds of fat and 5 pounds of muscle, guess what? They weigh the same 5 pounds, but muscle is so much smaller.
They don't look the same.
They sure don't.
Yeah.
And one's harder to get rid of than the other. You can lose muscle much faster than you can lose fat.
Absolutely, especially as you age.
Mm-hmm. But guess what? You can gain muscle faster than you can lose fat too. So you can be gaining muscle while you still have that fat there as you're starting to break it down. And so a lot of the times that's why the scale doesn't
lies.
It doesn't tell the full story. That's the issue with the scale. It is an extremely limited, one-dimensional measurement of a body that is multidimensional and multifactorial, right? Many of these causes in many of these specific situations that you're bringing in. So it's relevant. It has relevance, but it only has relevance in that sliver where it has relevance. Listen, we're not a kitchen scale, and there you go. I was going to say 7 ounces. You're 12 ounces of beef. You know what's on my mind, right? Like, you're not just this 12 ounces of beef, and that's what it is, right? There's all these integrated systems. So it's very relevant, and I think it's important within that sliver that it can operate, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, though, is that our society gets so tunnel visioned, right? And we've been so tunnel visioned, especially speaking to women about what they should look like or how they should fit into this box of things. And it's put us all into this seesaw to where we're so out of balance that we create all kinds of problems for us in our psyche and our identity, but also just in how we're treating ourselves, right? I mean, we treat ourselves so badly if we aren't within a certain poundage. Right? I mean, it's like we're weighing our value by our poundage instead of by who we really are. And that scale is like one of the biggest deceivers. We know deceivers. And they are all designed to kill, steal, and destroy, right? Yeah. All of them.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I have been able to, okay, let me start over. I can tell that I'm healing emotionally because when I was first married the first time, 20 years ago, well, more than 20 years ago, we had a scale and I would weigh myself like every day. And we somehow lost it after like a few weeks. And I was like, that's okay. Like, I was obsessed. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to focus on it. And since going on this health journey, we have recently bought another scale for like the second time in my life. And I've weighed myself a couple times and we've had it for like 2 months. So I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I hope you got a smart scale though, not just one that just weighs you. I mean, because I think that's so important for everybody to know is that you need to have the bird's eye view, right? You don't want to have that tunnel vision. Tunnel vision always gets you in trouble. I mean, that was one of the things in our training when I was a police officer. It's like you never want to get into this point to where you only have this little minute vision, right? Because then you're missing everything that's around, and some of that can be fatal to your existence. Right. And some of that can be just a major hiccup in the road of decision making. But if we can just practice taking a breath and taking a step back, and it's like, okay, I need to see the whole picture. So like when I hop on the scale and I see it's like, I've gained a pound. What did I do that was wrong that made me gain a pound? You didn't do anything. You got to know the whole thing, right? Maybe you've hydrated better than you were hydrated before, because that can add in extra weight. Or maybe you have exchanged, or increased some muscle mass and lost some fat. And so you need to look at what the numbers are for that fat percentage. But hydration is I think is one of the most important underutilized health tools that people can have. And it basically doesn't cost people anything. It's just a matter of drinking water, right?
Yes.
It's a matter of drinking water.
Yes.
I can get on the soapbox with that.
Yeah. And that's what's happened to me on this journey is, people talking about how they've lost a lot of weight. And I was so happy that I started losing inches and I didn't lose any weight. And then I realized that I lost a pound, but also my fat went down and my muscle went up. And I was like, yes, victory.
Right.
That's yes. So we definitely have a smart scale. We're not just looking at the weight.
Yeah. So. Well, and then on top of the smart scale where it measures, your hydration, it measures your percentage of muscle to fat. It measures all those different things. On top of that, your actual measurements. I mean, I never knew that, you could measure your waist to see, and that's a good measurement of what your wellness is, right? What your health picture is like. Yeah. I mean, because I don't think I've ever been within a healthy waist measurement, like since I was probably in single digits, age-wise, just because I always thought I had a trunk. I didn't know that I actually had a waist until we started with this weight management and this amazing journey of activation. I lost over 5 inches off of my waist.
Wow.
Alone. I'm almost down 18 inches total.
Holy cow.
Right? So measuring my bust, measuring my under chest because of the back fat, that's how you can measure that back fat, right? And then measuring my waist and my hips. And just in those areas, I've lost almost 18 inches. And so tell me this, it's like, I've lost 10 fluctuating to 11 pounds, right? In 15 weeks now. But when you look at the measurements and what that really means, when my muscle mass has increased, then obviously that visceral fat is shrinking, that dangerous choking fat is going away. And I feel better. I feel like I look better in my clothes. Those are the things that we should really be concerned about is like, how do you feel? Right? We could go on and on.
So you're talking about a course of about 4 or 5 measurements, right? Different places in the body. And yes, the waist measurement is one of the simplest, easy predictors of future health and wellness, right? Just that one measurement. Again, it's one-dimensional, but it's actually more predictive than just the scale, right? Okay. But you're talking about 18 combined inches, Marci, finding a body that you didn't know that you had since you were single-digit years. Which is like
and I didn't have a waist back then. This was pre.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And what time frame are we talking about this transformation? It's been incremental, but what does that kind of start to? There's no finish line, right?
No,
start to where we are right now to get those results.
Okay. So first of all, I would say that the first things that I noticed were right away, and that was in my mind. My mind, I had such a poor picture of myself. I think that women in general, we've been conditioned to find our faults And so when we're looking in the mirror, we're always like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, the way these clothes are fitting, I can't believe you chose these to wear. I can't believe you're going to go outside looking like this. It's like, don't you see that back fat? I see the back fat. Everybody's going to see the back fat, all those things that we say to ourselves. But I'll tell you that on day 2 of this journey, I was looking at myself and my brain told me, you look thinner already. And I was like blown away because that was not the way I was used to talking to myself. And so when we talk about overall wellness, we've got to make sure that we understand that if there is a disconnect between your gut, which is your second brain, and your actual brain, then you're going to be getting all kinds of mixed messages. And those mixed messages do not do you any favors. They do not put you on the right path. They do not encourage you. They do not get you doing, what you should be doing to feel good about yourself, to be healthy, all that kind of stuff. But then shortly after that, we got home and just a couple days later, I took a second set of measurements in less than a week's time, and I had already lost 2 inches.
Wow.
Right. And so my brain wasn't lying to me. My brain knew that what was supposed to have been happening in my whole lifetime was back to happening again. It was working again. It was getting reconnected to, those different parts of my body, the different systems. I mean, our whole body is so magnificent in the way that it is created. God created us in such a way that, we have little small, minute pieces that all fit together into this puzzle and into these systems. And then all these systems work together perfectly when they're working, right? But then when they stop working, that's when everything goes chaotic. But that was just like within the first week. Within, I think it's about 10 days, I think I had lost about 5 pounds or something like that pretty quickly, which means I had a lot of inflammation. I had a lot of, stuff that I needed to get rid of, which in that, I think everybody does. That inflammation, that water that you're holding on to because of the inflammation and different things that are going on in your body. Once your systems start working properly, you start eliminating a lot of that stuff that has caused that bloatiness, that causes that puffiness, or that bulge around the waist, all those kinds of things. But in 45 days time period, this is what's happening. 45 days, when you think about it, that's only a month and a half. That's only about just over 6 weeks time, right? I had lost about 10 pounds and I was at about 13 inches at that point that I had lost.
Wow.
Right? In 6.5 weeks. And it wasn't a matter of me, having this whole big plan that I'm going to revamp the whole way that I eat and I'm going to go and I'm going to exercise, this many hours a day or anything like that. It was nothing like that. Just like my brain started talking to me differently on day 2, my brain started telling me when I would look at food, it's like, okay, Marci, you need more protein. You need protein. You need a lot more protein. You're not getting enough protein. Your body needs protein. Your muscles need protein. And so I would crave protein. I had been a sugar addict, and from day 1, that's been gone. I've had no desire for sugar whatsoever. And if you can increase your protein, decrease your sugars, there's going to be magnificent things happening inside your body, right?
Definitely.
But one thing that Dondee and I did too, because we wanted to get the inside picture of what was going on with us as we went through this process, we did before blood work. And then we did after blood work after 45 days. And when I got the results of my before blood work, I was like, holy crap. I had no idea that I had high cholesterol. I had no idea that I was borderline pre-diabetic, right? I mean, I had a pretty stressful about year time period because I had taken on a lot of projects. I'm going to school. I was finishing up a book. Obviously running our business and everything else that goes along with being in a blended family and kids and grandkids and, everything.
Wait, are you talking about you? Or are you talking about us?
Oh, I know, right? I know. It's like I knew you guys would catch on to that kind of stuff. But there's so much that can increase our stress. And my cortisol was like off the charts of what they said was normal. Like I was really out of range. That was not good. And so I decided that it's like, okay, I'm just going to let this flow. We're going to do after blood work. And I am so glad that we did. Because in just 45 days time, my cholesterol went down 31 points.
Wow.
And guys, I didn't change anything other than, adding in this amazing activating system that turned on my body again to do what it was designed to do in the first place. And then it started working for me, right, instead of against me. And then on top of that, my cortisol went down 5 points. My A1C dropped zero point 0.3 points in 45 days, which took me back into the normal round. And then my insulin dropped 4.8 points and my glucose dropped 8 points.
Wow.
All in 45 days, which that's not something you see out in the regular world. But once you turn your own body back on, I mean, whether you believe it or not, when you look in the mirror, you're a magnificent creature, right? And you were actually designed and made to heal yourself as long as the body's not being interfered with. And that's what I find is that for many, many years of my life, and I'm sure that you guys can relate to this too, and I'm sure that anybody that's hearing this, it will resonate that whether it's choices that you've made yourself or things that have impacted you in your environment, whether it's the food that you have to eat, whether it is the air that you're breathing, the water, whatever's in your water, there's so many different things that are toxic to us that change the way things work inside of our bodies, and it creates damage. That damage increases and creates inflammation, and then we have all kinds of issues going on. But, being able to turn your body back on to its original design gives your body the power to fight for itself, to heal itself, and to support you in every endeavor that you want, looking and feeling with the energy that you want every day. So I don't know. I hope that answered the question, Seth. That was kind of long form, but in about 45 days, all of that happens. Right now, I'm just over 15 weeks into this, and I'm at that about 18 inches lost, and I've been fluctuating between 10 and 12 pounds. So I've been pretty steady there since, that 45-day point. But, the scale, that's not freaking what matters.
What percentage of body fat are you seeing? What kind of differences are you seeing? Because Steph's had body fat changes, and lean muscle mass changes. You speak about the A1C and the pre-diabetic. We had pre-blood work done before we started on this journey with a natural GLP-1 approach. And my A1C is down, my blood sugar is down, and I'm not pre-diabetic. I'm not diabetic. I'm not pre-diabetic, but I do have two grandmothers that were diabetic for, I believe, decades, right?
Yeah.
Hello, right?
Hello.
So to see those is super powerful. But you talk about visceral fat and body fat. That's a deeper part of of our health. What were you seeing there?
I wish I could answer that with full numbers because we didn't get our SMART scale until after that 45-day mark. And yet I can tell you that I've already lost, I think it's like 0.75% of body fat since I did get the Renpho, which means that more than likely, because I can tell you from the previous, measurements I had gotten, I've probably lost 4 to 5%, I would say, of body fat. But because I didn't have that scale before when we first got started on this journey, I can't give you the exact numbers on that, but I can tell you that 5 inches off of my waist is telling.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Well, one thing I've learned, again, full disclosure, this for everybody who's listening, right? Like we all learn from our experiences. So Steph and I, before we decided to really look at, again, a combination of weight, long-term wellness, blood sugar, gut health, right? The hook is usually the weight for most of us, right? Like everybody's like, who doesn't want to lose 5 to 12 pounds, right? But before we started that journey with GLP-1, we decided we're going to get a baseline. And I'm telling everybody who's listening this right now, number one, you don't have to be perfect because we certainly aren't. And you're going to hear that in this story. At the same time, you're going to learn along the way, but what you can do today is what you can do today. So here's the deal. We went to a university to have a body composition test done in a chamber, right? So we did that day one as we're starting this protocol. And it took some time to do. We had to make an appointment. It wasn't super expensive at all. It was actually pretty cheap. But it was also limited in what it would show you. Basically, here's your body fat percentage.
And your
And your metabolism, like how many calories you're burning and that sort of thing, and body lean muscle mass. Lean muscle mass. And there's a purpose to the story. Then later we decided, let's get a Renpho, right? Smart scale. So we did that. And guess what? The way, like every tool is a little bit different. And so the Renpho was giving us totally different numbers.
I liked the Renpho numbers.
I hated the Renpho because in the chamber, my body fat was pretty doggone low. And I was like, dang, all right. Right. And for Steph, it was way higher than she even thought it could be. Right. Yeah. And we got on the Renpho and hers was lower. Mm-hmm. Right. And there was actually several weeks between this. So it wasn't like we were testing these scales with the same input, right? We had different bodies, but we knew something was right. There was no way that my body fat percentage had gone up in those few weeks, but the Renpho showed that I'd had.
Well, even like it went up on the Renpho, like several percentages.
Oh, for me, it was more than several. Like, believe me, I remember what it was. I was like, no. We're talking double digits. Double digit. There's no way that's impossible. No. Then we actually did the in-body scan, which, we go to our health food store once a month now. We're doing that. So we've literally at 3 different times. Oh, no. And then we went back to the body composition chamber. So we've done because we're trying to compare baselines, right, to progress reports. So the reason that we share this is there are a lot of tools out there. Mm-hmm. For me, if we were to go back knowing what I know now, what we know now, probably ditch the university in-body composition scale chamber, number one. It's number one is very limited. It only gives you 2. We're only measuring 2 things, right? Mm-hmm. May stick with the Renpho. That's easy. That's something everybody can get for less than $50, right? Depending on which model you're getting. Because what's important is not necessarily, does this, they all have a margin of error, right? Mm-hmm. And they're all taking that metric in a different way, or many of them in different ways. So, you know what? Pick one, pick the easy one, and stick with that one so that you're measuring like against like, because wait a second, depending on where you're taking this measurement, don't measure don't put your Renpho on the carpet one day and the tile the next. Well, that's what we did over, 3 different types of styles. And now, and so, hey, what does that mean? Well, it means that we maybe didn't get the clearest picture of our baseline originally, but that's okay. Like, this is life. That's kind of what life's about. So if you're learning from us and about to start that journey, pick a baseline, right? Pick one of those and stick with it.
I would just say number 1 is do your measurements and do your before photos.
Absolutely.
Because those measurements, as long as you measure in the same places the same way,
yes,
and those photos, those are going to be a true picture for you, right? I mean, because think about it. How does that dang scale measure my body fat anyway?
Yes.
You know what I mean? How does that scale know how hydrated I am anyway, right? I mean, we're just kind of putting our faith into a piece of machinery that we hope is giving us the correct readings, where, if you take those measurements, if you trust how you're feeling, right? Trust your body, trust your body. And then those before photos, guys, you don't have to share them with everybody, especially in the beginning. But I got to tell you, you can't have an after photo without a before. And you'll be glad, no matter what journey you're starting, when it has to do with your physique, you got to take those pictures. It's important. Be vulnerable. It's okay to not look great in those before, because that's the whole deal, right? We're on a journey to improving ourselves and helping our bodies be better, increasing our wellness. So don't be, my thing is don't be ashamed of where you started. Be grateful that you're on the journey.
It really is a willingness for you to fall in love with yourself, all of yourself. Mm-hmm. And the goal is not the goal, right? If there is a goal, it's just to PB, And I don't mean PB&J, no peanut butter here. I'm just talking about personal bests, right? Personal bests from my baseline, not personal bests. Am I better than I was at my very peak before I knew anything, when my metabolism was working 100% and I didn't actually really even take care of it, but I just got grace from God, right? And I looked amazing, right? Now, I'm not talking about that personal best. That was an ignorant, just dumb luck personal best. I'm talking about where you started when you made the decision, right? Maybe it was last week, maybe it was 11 weeks ago. I think we were at 11 or 12 weeks. I know you're a few weeks ahead of us on that, but it really is just about falling in love with you and loving yourself and all of the, which includes all of the journey. I was looking today after I did a workout this morning and got ready, and I thought, you know what? Wow, I'm so happy. Like I'm feeling great. I like what I'm seeing. I like the changes, right? I like the progress, but most importantly, I like the process. Right? The progress is great, but I am in love with the process, and that is happiness, right?
Yeah. Something about the process. I think that as human beings, I mean, since the 70s, when the microwave was first introduced, we have become such a people of instant gratification and wanting things done like that, right? It's like, oh, the microwave just dinged, right? So my meal that should have taken hours to cook is done in 15 minutes. Don't worry about, all of the waves that just killed all of the nutrition in your food and all that kind of stuff. You got it fast. That's all that matters, is that it happened fast. Well, I think that that's where a lot of people fall into basically setting themselves up for failure before they even get started with their expectations. Having the expectations that, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this thing. It's going to be a magic pill. It's going to be a magic potion, a magic drink, whatever it is. And I'm not going to have to change anything myself. And I can just do this and it's all going to be better. I'm going to have the body I want. I'm going to have the mindset I want. I'm going to have just overall everything that I want, right? Where that's not how it works. I mean, especially if you're you guys are a little bit younger than I don't know, Seth. I don't know how old you are, but I know Stephanie's younger than me.
Okay, let's just have full disclosure here. Full disclosure. I turned 50 this fall.
Okay, so you're younger than me too. So I'll be 54 in March, right? And so that means that there's been decades of years that my body has either been used, abused, drugged, not illegally. I've eaten things that I shouldn't have eaten. I haven't slept as much as I should have slept. I've drank things I shouldn't have drunk. All these different things. I've had spine surgeries. I've had brain injuries. I've had breast implants. I've had my breast implants removed. All the toxicity that goes along with that. All these different things that have happened over those decades of time. We can't expect it to be corrected in 30 days. We can't expect it to be corrected in 3 months. I mean, we need to give our bodies the opportunity to counteract everything that we've done up till this point. Right? I mean, I've had children too, which that in itself is a big enough stressor on the human body. And yet when we think about that too, I mean, we just need to get back to being so grateful for what these bodies can do for us, what type of a vehicle God gave us to go throughout this whole life in, right? They were designed to carry us the whole way. It's just what we've done to them in between all of that, the time that it was given to us to the time that it's going to stop working for us. But along that path, there are some things that are so important. I mean, first of all, our identity is not based off of what the world says about us or what people make us try to think we are, or what society has put out there in magazines, especially for women. I mean, I know for myself, when I was a young girl, there's those swimsuit magazines where all these beautiful models were on there with the perfect figures, which I didn't know that they were airbrushed until, just a couple decades ago. But when you're a young girl, especially, I mean, boys, you still have a little bit of that. But for us women coming up in this society, it's been hard because we've been shown this picture that we didn't know was fake, but it's this picture of supposedly what women are supposed to look like and how you should be to be able to be accepted and loved the way that we all want to be loved. You have to look like that. And yet it's not possible right? And so we have this whole idea inside of our heads to where we're comparing ourselves, first of all, to something else that's not even real. And then on top of it, we're judging ourselves based off of that lie. And then we're making ourselves feel shame because we can't live up to the expectations of everyone else. And so looking at that, I mean, when you start judging yourself from those viewpoints, you start making decisions to try to get yourself to fit into that norm or to fit into that box that everybody says that you should fit into. And so when you start to do that, you start comparing yourself to other people. And one of my things that I'm pretty sure I coined it. I've never heard anybody else say it until after I did. So I'm owning it and taking TM, brand it. But compare-itis, right? Compare-itis is the most fatal itis that there is, because it is guaranteed to kill, steal, and destroy every goal, hope, dream, and the purpose God put on your life if you fall into it. And yet we have total and complete control over our healing from it. And that's just in believing the truth about us, believing what God says about us, not what the world says, and knowing that we are individual, we are unique, we are valuable exactly the way that we are, loving ourselves. Because if we don't do that, what we do end up doing is making decisions like I did when I was 29 years old. I had already had my 2 children. I had breastfed them. My body had done this beautiful job that God had given it to do, partnering with Him in creation, right? I mean, what an honor. And what amazing things my body did, right? I mean, Stephanie, you know what I'm talking about. And Seth, you've seen it, so you know what I'm talking about too.
Let me tell you, I think it's amazing.
Yes, but the thing is that I found myself divorced. And I found myself facing dating again. And so I'm sitting there looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, who in the heck is ever going to want these used goods? And so immediately I start thinking about breast implants, because I got to tell you, just to paint this picture for you, which I'm sure you're going to love this, Seth, but Stephanie, you can probably relate, or many women will relate, is that after breastfeeding, back then my skin did not have the elasticity that has now. I didn't have good collagen like I do now. And so the elasticity, my skin did not recover after breastfeeding. And so I had breasts that were like having tube socks with a golf ball in the bottom of them, swinging down near my navel instead of up at my chest where it was supposed to be, right? If I had a good bra, it might help. But then when you take the bra off, then yeah. And so I was just looking at myself, and then my best friend, she's a hairdresser and she was amazing and she had fantastic clientele. And one of the guys that she helped do his hair all of the time was going through school and was graduating as a surgeon. And he wasn't sure what his specialty was going to be yet. And so he was going to dabble in different areas. And he offered her, for her and 2 of her friends, to do boob jobs, breast augmentations, 3 for the price of 1. And we were like, oh my gosh, what a great deal. So we jumped at it because we thought that would be the solution to all of our woes, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I'll have boobs up at my chest again. And, I will be appealing and I will be worthy of love and I will be desirable and all of that stuff that we're told that is just lies from the enemy. Mm-hmm. And so when I got my implants, I thought that was the solution. And I think a lot of women look at whether it's injections or whether they look at different types of surgeries, plastic surgeries, implants, whatever it is, looking at that as being the solution, but they're not counting the total cost. Mm-hmm. First of all, the cost to our psyche, the cost to our confidence, the cost to, and yeah, you might be thinking, it's like, well, didn't your confidence boost when you got those implants? Yeah, it did. But it was such a fake confidence, right? It wasn't real. Mm-hmm. And so we don't count the costs of what it's doing to us and how we're actually looking at ourselves and really feeling about ourselves. Plus, when you add something into your body that isn't supposed to be there, our bodies go to battle against it. That's what our immune system is for, right? Our immune system battles viruses, which are foreign, that come into our body and try to make us sick. Our immune system battles slivers. When we get a sliver in our finger or in our foot and it hurts really bad and it gets infected and, it gets all pussy even and red and hot, that's your immune system battling that foreign object to get it out. Well, when you get implants or any other thing that you put into your body that is not supposed to be there, your immune system goes to battle against it. And that's what happens with breast implants. And that's what happened to me. And there is such a thing as breast implant illness. And I ended up with that. And so when I talk about counting the costs, it's so much more than what it costs initially to be able to get the implants. So much more than, your own self-worth. And because when you look at yourself and you have those implants, it's fake. It's not real. That's not really you, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different things that start costing us. And yet, if we would just look at ourselves as being the magnificent human beings that we were created to be, knowing that each one of us was designed specifically to be who we are, and that we can be grateful for that. And I understand many people are faced with physical problems that they don't have control over, or they don't think that they have control over. It's amazing what we're learning. It's amazing, the science that's coming out. And I'm not going to say trust the science, because I know we've all been burned by that. Or many people have been burned by that. I haven't been burned by that because I like to use
There's good science. There is great science out there.
There is. But I'm not just going to tell people to just trust the science. Use your due diligence. Use your common sense, right? If something doesn't feel right in your gut, you better look into it. Don't just go along with it, right? Mm-hmm. Because we have those instincts. They are there for a reason, right? And so don't just go along with it. But I was listening to a podcast recently with Dave Asprey, which if you don't know who he is, he's phenomenal in the biohacking realm.
Yes.
He's got some really amazing books. He's a fantastic guy. And then he was doing an interview with Naveen, I think it's Jain, is how you say his last name. But they were talking, and it's like in the past, we always used to, just look at our genes, our genetics, whatever happened with our parents or our grandparents is what we're going to have to deal with in our future, because it's all hereditary, right? It all comes down through the bloodlines. Well, what they were talking about is that, that's what people used to think. Mm-hmm. They used to think, that huge percentage of possibility of you, like my mother died when I was 20 years old from cancer. She was only 54 years old. Coming up in March, I'll be the same age she was when she passed away, which blows my ever-loving mind. But I used to be concerned about colon cancer and about all these different things, and having to make sure that I had my regular colonoscopies because I want to make sure I catch it before my mother did, all those things that come into our minds and start playing this devil's advocate into our illness, because what you think about, you bring about, right? Yeah. And so if you're focusing on that kind of stuff, you will bring it into your possibility. And yet what they were talking about is that 93 to 95% of our wellness is in our complete direct control, meaning our choices, our lifestyle, the food we eat, how much sleep we get, how much hydration. Water is life, friends. If you are not hydrating enough, think about this as an example. If you're not hydrating your body, that is probably 70% water, and you're only drinking maybe 2 glasses of water a day, maybe 20 ounces of water a day, your body is functioning in such a way that it can't have all those systems working properly. Like if you think about your heart, if you think about your lungs, if you think about your kidneys, your gut, all of that is such a high percentage of water. We're talking like 50, 60, 70% water for those organs. And yet if you're not giving it the hydration it needs for them to stay hydrated, think about a raisin and a grape. You're asking your heart to pump blood throughout your whole body as a raisin, instead of that grape that should have that pumping ability, right? So hydration is the number one place where I would have people really start if they want to take control and have that 93 to 97% control over their own wellness. But then when it comes to moving your body, right? Movement is the lubrication of the body. It's like if you are sedentary, if you have aches and pains in your low back, if you have aches and pains in your hips, your knees, there's a couple things you need to look at. You need to look at your hydration. You need to look at your movement, because if you are not moving, then all of the connective tissue is shortening and it is making it so that it's much more difficult for you to get up and move, right? And so of course there's going to be pain in there. But then on top of all of that, what was I going to say next? Because it was really good and I just went blank on it. But these are the things that we have complete control over, right? And your mindset, right? So what you let into your brain is going to depict the thoughts you have throughout the day. And as I already mentioned, what you think about, you bring about. So instead of thinking that it's like, my dad, which is his true story, my dad and his mother had Alzheimer's for like 15 years, which is a really long time to have Alzheimer's. She was in a care facility. I mean, I never really knew my grandma because she was always in a care facility for Alzheimer's. And when my dad got older, he ended up with dementia, and he eventually died due to complications from dementia. And so that could be in my mind that it's like, oh my gosh, that's what I've got to look forward to. That's what's going to happen. Or no, I can take the steps to change my lifestyle, to eat good food, to eliminate toxins, to not use toxic hair care or skin care, because anything you put on your face or in your hair, it goes directly into your brain. And we wonder why we have such an uptake in neurological disorders. And then, I could get into vaccines. I could get into all kinds of stuff. Why do you think we have such an uptake in the spectrum? When did it become a spectrum? When did it become such a broad spectrum that just about everybody fits on it? It's when we started listening to doctors instead of common sense, going to what was created for our wellness, which is God's pharmacy. If you guys, if whoever's listening, if you're believers and if you know what in the beginning means, if you go back to that process and you read just the book of Genesis, you will see that God gave us everything that we needed for our sustenance and our wellness before he ever created us. And that's all we need. It's not what has been designed and put into place by man. We're supposed to trust in what God has done, not trust in man. And so I could keep going and going and going. I mean, it's like we can talk about doctors, we can talk about advocacy, we can talk about finding your voice, because women, that's what we have to do. We have to take ownership.
I think one of the beautiful results of what some would call the biohacking movement, and there are many, Dave Asprey, obviously, Ben Greenfield. I've actually got his book Boundless, which is like the Bible of, like it is, like the Bible of biohacking. Dr. David Sinclair, Sanjay Gupta, and many, many others, combining the old ways with new discoveries, right? Like we know more than we did in the past, right? And utilizing that for our benefit. When you think that, wow, my health is probably just predetermined, right? There's such a weight, right? I mean, it used to be like, well, you're hereditarily predetermined, or maybe some of us thought predestined, right, to this outcome. Then you can not take responsibility, right? And then I think numbers even several years ago was, 70% of what we experience is lifestyle. 70% of what you experience as aging is lifestyle. And now the new numbers, we're talking 90+%. Guess where that puts the autonomy and responsibility? Right back in your own corner. It's on your shoulders. And we've said it 1,000 times, or we will say it 1,000 times. We've said it many times in the show. You are the CEO of your health. Yes. Right? You are the advocate. You are the decision maker. You have the autonomy to make those decisions. And not only do you have the autonomy, you have the influence to create those outcomes. Like you're the CEO. So absolutely critical concept that you've got to take responsibility. Like Erin Brockovich, and hopefully we can have her on the show again, talk about her book, because we didn't get to talk about that as much last time. But Superman's not coming to save you, right? You are the hero. Like there is no supernatural superhero who's here to save you, you are the hero, you are the protagonist in the hero's journey, right? You don't need to have a uniform or, some super special, cosmic superpower. But you have to do the work. You have to be willing to make micro decisions, fall in love with process, right? 1 ounce, to speak to Marci's dissertation on hydration, 1 ounce at a time, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because way too many of us were programmed that if someone walks into a room, they have on a white coat and a stethoscope, that we have to listen to every single thing that they say as if it's gospel truth, where there is a reason why they call it practicing medicine. Because every single one of us humans is completely different, by the way. We have very much in common, our bodies and our systems and all that kind of stuff, but our individuality is a real thing, right? And so when they come into the room, they really are practicing when they come up with something to share with you or to tell you to do. And so that's where it's so important. You know yourself so much better than your doctor does. You have a brain for a reason, right? You don't have a brain just to take in what everybody else says you should do. You have a brain to be able to use it to work for you, right? So it doesn't mean that you have to know everything. It just means that you have to be willing to ask questions and learn things, right? I mean, there's a reason why all of these biohackers are coming out into just the total, the light, and everybody is really looking at what they have to say now. It's because they are the people, they were the pioneers. They were the ones that are like, I don't know about this. I don't know that that's how my body's supposed to function. I believe that my body can do a heck of a lot more than what you're telling me it can do. And I'm going to do whatever I can to be able to get the highest performance out of my physicality as I possibly can. Whether it's my physical body, it's my brain, whatever it is, I'm going to be the sharpest tool in the box, right? And so I think that that's where we've had this shift. And I think I think we're getting ready to get to that tipping point to where more and more people are willing to look at this natural way of thinking, biohacking our bodies. And biohacking just means taking control of a system and getting it to work at the highest level it can, not through manipulation, but through working with it. We like to call it activation, right? By activating it to work the exact way it's supposed to. And so it just really does come down to being willing to say, I don't know. I don't think that sounds right for me. It's like
critical thinking.
Yes.
Like we have to be critical thinkers. As you're talking about that, and again, we have so many incredible. Well, you're married to a healthcare practitioner who could in a really stylish way don those white lab coats should he want to, right? But it is the democratization of healthcare, meaning that at the very basic level, natural law, even, we are responsible for our own healthcare, right? That is a natural foundational law. We can give that up if we so choose. We can rely on other people. We can blindly follow others. And we also have a system like the United States spends more money on healthcare than any other country in the world. The U.S. is the number one spender of money investment on healthcare in the world, but we rank number 42 in longevity, right? If we look at, and again, there's so many wonderful things. I think we have to be super careful of being too myopic and saying, there are so many grays, right? As opposed to moral, absolute black and whites, right? Like drugs aren't bad. Pharmaceuticals aren't bad. They are what they are. So we should know what they are when we pick them up. United Healthcare, by the way, has been in the news recently, obviously. But they are one of the most profitable and valuable companies in the entire world. Awesome. It's representative of a system of healthcare. And I think what you're saying, Marci, is there are so many let me include of us, who are saying, and so many healthcare practitioners, right? Dr. Casey Means, and I mean, I could, Paul Saladino, MD, right? So many who are online, and many biohackers who are saying, wait a second, is there another way? Are there other ways? And let's look at that scientifically, not simply shamanistically, although I love some great history and spirituality, right? Combined with many of those traditions. But there's an awakening. I think that is happening as we democratize healthcare, meaning that it's not top down. It's not being told what to do because an authority who knows more than I do does. And that never works really in any society, whether we're talking politically, right? Or in this case, healthcare. It is a bottom-up approach. It really starts with the individual who has to be then educated, right? On values and principles in order to make wise decisions.
Mm-hmm. I think another important thing is listening to your gut, especially as a woman, really trusting what your gut is telling you and leading with that. I find more and more people, especially women, are starting to do that and waking up to, instead of being told what is or what to do, it's more of, like you said, no, I don't agree with that. I'm going to figure it out on my own. Thank you.
Yes. And women, we're also giving such a responsibility if we've had children, because we also have to have that intuition and that gut instinct for our kids, right?
Yes.
And so we have to make sure that we're willing to follow through with that as well for them. Because if we don't, and Seth, speaking to what you were just saying about, you said we have the largest healthcare system. I beg to differ. We have the biggest illness system in the world, and we are definitely number one in critical care, which I'm grateful for critical care. I mean, obviously I was in a car accident. I needed surgeries. Our critical care is so important, but when it comes to wellness, we're just about last in the world, right? And I think that it's been by design. I think you guys would agree with me on that. It's been by design because sick people make people money, and sick people are easier to control. Mm-hmm. And so it really does have to be those of us that know different, know better, are using that intuition that you're talking about, Stephanie, and willing to speak out about it and doing it publicly, so that other people, other women, you are so powerful. You have such a huge role in this world, that you need to find your voice and be willing to share what you know. Maybe you're just learning it. Maybe it's something that you're just grasping yourself. And that's where it's important to find a community of people that are thinking the way that you're thinking, so that you have that support system and maybe have people that you can be asking questions of. Be cautious of this community, because you don't want to just get into a bunch of wackos, because there is a bunch of wackos out there too. I mean, you've got the medical doctors on one side, you got the wackos, and then you got the biohackers right here in the middle. And we're waiting to embrace you with open arms, because we are really learning some really magnificent things that just set with your soul in such a way that it fits, that it's right, that you don't have to have, doubts about the decision that you're making for your wellness and for your family's wellness, knowing that if you are giving your body what it needs to thrive and to heal itself, it will. And it's not from a white prescription pad. That's not where it needs to come from all of the time. Sometimes it's important, but most of the time, that's not where it comes from.
And cut. It's a wrap.
Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you for sharing this episode with that one friend who needs this conversation. Thank you for all the ratings, the reviews, the comments, and especially the support. We so appreciate you.
Now, if you want to take a peek behind the curtain and be the first to know about special previews, backstage updates here at the show, and especially some private collection content that doesn't come out in the regular show,
be sure to join our VIP community at theforeveryoungshow.com.